Hello and welcome to Awaz News. I'm Kubra Ali and I'll be taking you through big news across Canada.
Ontario Children's Hospital reports unprecedented demand surge in respiratory illness. Emergencies Act inquiry a federal matter, not a provincial one, Doug Ford says. 2 girls sexually assaulted in North York Park, Toronto police. Armed robbery suspect who allegedly duct taped 2 men inside Toronto apartment in 2017 arrested. RCMP probing reports of criminal activity at so-called Chinese police stations in the GTA.
These were the headlines and let's jump right into the details.
Toronto police have arrested a suspect who allegedly duct taped 2 men in West End apartment in a botched armed robbery attempt more than 5 years ago. Mark Anthony Stevenson, 28, of Toronto, who has been wanted on a Canada-wide warrant since 2018, was stopped for speeding by police in Durham on October 25th and taken into custody. Stevenson, who police said also goes by name Anthony Bennett, has been at large since the 2017 attack at a condo building in the city's Swansea neighborhood. Officers were first called to a shooting in the area of the Queensway and Windermere Avenue on March 27th of that year. When they arrived on scene, they located 2 men, 27 and 23, in the apartment. Prior to the shooting, investigators with the Toronto Police Services hold-up squad alleged an unknown man carrying a clipboard knocked on the apartment door and said he was there to inspect the unit's ventilation. The man brandished a handgun and forced his way inside, police said at the time. At that point, the man duct taped the 2 men and placed them in the apartment's washroom while he searched the unit, according to police. As the suspect searched the apartment, he made several demands for money, police said. Then one of the victims freed himself and rushed the suspect. A struggle followed and the suspect fired his handgun, which grazed the victim's head and struck him in the hip, police said. The suspect then fled the apartment. The Canada-wide warrant was issued for Stevenson, then 23 years old age, by Toronto police on February 1, 2018. Stevenson was formally charged following his Tuesday arrest. He is facing 2 counts of robbery with firearm, 2 counts of forcible confinement to discharge firearm with intent, possession firearm contrary to prohibition order, in addition to a number of other charges. Stevenson was scheduled to appear in the Toronto courtroom on Wednesday. The Federal Competition Bureau has raised significant concerns about WestJet Airlines Limited's proposed acquisition of Sunwing Vacations and Sunwing Airlines, saying the deal will likely result in higher prices and decreased service for Canadians. In a report delivered to Canada's Transport Minister on Wednesday, the regulator said eliminating the rivalry between the 2 companies is likely to result in substantial lessening or prevention of competition in the sale of vacation packages to Canadians. The proposed transaction will result in one of Canada's largest integrated tour operators being acquired by one of its primary rivals in the provision of vacation packages, the report stated. Overall, WestJet and Sunwing account for approximately 37% of non-stop capacity between Canada and the Sun destinations and 72% of non-stop capacity between Western Canada and Sun destinations. WestJet announced a plan in March to buy Sunwing, a move that would bolster its holiday tour business. Financial terms of the agreement, which would see Sunwing's shareholders become equity holders in the WestJet Group, were not disclosed. In its report, the Competition Bureau noted that a merger of the 2 carriers would create a monopoly on 16 routes between Canada and Mexico or the Caribbean and would lessen or prevent competition for the provision of vacation packages on 31 total routes between Canada and Mexico or the Caribbean. In a news release, WestJet said the proposed Sunwing transaction is a central piece of the Calgary-based airline's commitment to prioritize leisure and sun travel from coast to coast and increase affordable air and vacation package offerings for all Canadians. Transport Canada is also conducting a public interest review of the proposed transaction. The final decision regarding the deal will be made by Cabinet based on recommendation from the minister. Ontario Premier Doug Ford defended his decision against testifying at the public inquiry into the federal government's Use of Emergencies Act in the provincial legislature Tuesday, saying the inquiry is not a provincial issue. Opposition members grilled Ford repeatedly in question period about his refusal to testify, their first chance to do so after he did not show up on Monday. This is a federal inquiry into the federal government's decision to use the Federal Emergencies Act, Ford said in response to a question from New Democrat leadership hopeful Marit Stiles. For Ontario, this was a policy matter, it was not a political matter. Ford's comments came as he finds a summons to testify at the inquiry which is examining the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act to end the so-called Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa and Windsor, Ontario last winter. The Public Order Emergency Commission summoned Ford and then Solicitor General Sylvia Jones on Monday to testify. Lawyers for Ford and Jones filed an application for judicial review in federal court Tuesday that seeks to quash the summons, citing parliamentary privilege. In its application, Ford's lawyers argue the summons breaches that privilege by attempting to compel Ford and Jones to testify. Ford said the province has provided 2 top bureaucrats to participate in the inquiry and has provided 800 pages of cabinet documents about the issue. The Premier answered only one question in the legislature before deferring numerous follow-ups to one of his top ministers, Government House leader Paul Calandra. Calandra answered Stiles' second question about Ford's refusal to testify, repeating much of what Ford said, which echoed what he said himself the day before when the Premier did not attend question period. The Commission wants Ford and Jones to testify on November 10th, court documents show. Provincial lawyers have sought to have its application heard on November 1st. Last week, Ford told reporters he was not asked to testify at the inquiry. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has already been interviewed by Commission lawyers and is set to testify at the inquiry. The inquiry has heard Trudeau and Ford's absence was due to political reasons in call between the Prime Minister and Watson in early February. The Commission wants to ask Ford and Jones why they did not come to that meeting and want to find out what role both played trying to solve the occupation in Ottawa and the protests that halted incoming traffic at the country's busiest border crossing in Windsor for nearly a week. Documents filed with inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act also show that when City of Ottawa officials asked the province for resources to help end the protests, the province directed them to deal with Ontario Provincial Police and that Jones saw it as a law enforcement issue.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is the federal inquiry into the federal government's use of the Federal Emergencies Act. From day one, Mr. Speaker, for Ontario, this was a policing matter. It was not a political matter. And the opposition knows, Mr. Speaker, politicians don't direct the police. Top officials from the OPP that were running the operation in conjunction with the municipal police agencies and the RCMP are testifying at the committee. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is a federal inquiry into the federal government's decision to use the Federal Emergencies Act.
The supplementary question.
A major Ottawa pediatric hospital says it's contending with unprecedented demand as it reports a surge in cases of a common respiratory virus. CHEO says the spike in respiratory syncytial virus comes as kids previously shielded by COVID-19 health restrictions are exposed to it for the first time. The hospital says it has admitted 30 children with the virus this month, when pre-pandemic it averaged 3 children for all of the month of October. CHEO says the RSV season is also starting earlier than usual, placing pressures on a hospital system now grappling with flu season and reported uptick in COVID-19 admissions. The hospital says its inpatient and intensive care units are running well over capacity and its emergency room built for 150 daily visits is seeing an average of 229. In Hamilton, a spokesperson for McMaster Children's Hospital says there are less than 10 admitted patients with the virus, but they remain concerned about hospital capacity with reports of an unusually high seasonal surge in viral illnesses. Toronto police say they are investigating after 2 girls were sexually assaulted in Toronto Park. According to a release issued Wednesday, a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old were in the area of Sentinel Park in North York on October 25th. Investigators allege that while in the park, the girls were approached by a man on a bike and were sexually assaulted. Police are describing the suspect as a black man with a medium build and hazel eyes, standing 6 feet tall and between the ages of 40 to 60 years old. He was last seen wearing a dark green sweater, black pants, carrying a grey and white backpack, and riding a black bicycle. The RCMP says it's investigating reports of criminal activity at so-called police stations reportedly set up by the People's Republic of China in the Greater Toronto Area. According to a recent and ongoing investigation by a Spanish-based non-government organization (NGO) called Safeguard Defenders, the People's Republic of China (PRC) has undertaken a concerted operation to force Chinese nationals living abroad who are accused of telecom and online fraud to return home. As part of this effort, Safeguard Defenders said China has opened a total of 54 so-called police service stations in 30 countries, including 3 in Canada in the Greater Toronto Area. It said the stations are often presented as necessary to accommodate the growing administrative needs of residents abroad, for example in renewing Chinese driver's licenses remotely and other tasks traditionally considered of a consular nature, but the NGO claims that the stations serve a more sinister goal as well. CP24 has not independently confirmed the NGO report. In a statement to CP24 on Wednesday, RCMP did not specifically identify where the so-called police stations are located in its statement, nor did it provide any further details about the nature of the reported criminal activity. The force takes threats to the security of individuals living in Canada very seriously and is aware that foreign states may seek to intimidate or harm communities or individuals within Canada, RCMP spokesperson Camille Boilly-Laway said. As the RCMP is currently investigating the incident, there will be no further comment on the matter at this time. It is important for all individuals and groups living in Canada, regardless of their nationality, to know that there are support mechanisms in place to assist them when experiencing potential foreign interference or state-backed harassment and intimidation. A 21-page report released last month noted China has claimed that 230,000 fraud suspects were successfully persuaded to return home between April 2021 to July 2022. China's recently passed anti-telecom and network fraud law stipulates that citizens and organizations abroad can have their income confiscated, be fined, and/or face imprisonment upon return to the country. The new law is set to come into effect on December 1st. CP24 has reached out to the Chinese embassy for comment, but has not yet received a response.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm Kubra Ali. I'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same channel. Have a good night.